Welcome to part 2 on my guide on how to make traditional style levels in Mario Maker. If you haven't seen part 1, please see that first. Here I'm going to focus on examining the level design in main series Nintendo titles to see what we can learn about level design in those games to inform our design decisions in Mario Maker 2. We'll be jumping through an assortment of levels from SMB1, SMB3, Super Mario World, New Soup, and 3D World, focusing on selected sections of levels that kind of demonstrate their design principles pretty clearly. So let's jump right in. This is 3-1 of SMB1, and I want to focus on how it's designed. So first, we see green Koopas, just on flat ground. Very easy in terms of like how Mario can deal with them. However, they force Mario to jump, or time running under them. He can choose whichever one to do and then deal with it. You can jump around, you have many different options, jumping up, etc. The number one thing about SMB1 and its level design is that it's all about movement, alright? The level design here is extraordinarily primitive. By Mario Maker standards, we can do a lot better than SMB1, alright? I see a lot of people copying SMB1 or like rating it as, oh, it's the best in terms of level design ever. That's some garbage commentary, alright? Because it's the first. It was it was for pioneering purposes very good, but it wasn't like it was the first. They're still learning things. It would suck if we didn't come far since then. But that's my daily hot take. Alright, we have many different options of where to move. You always see these little hurdles as pipes, platforms to jump to. The whole point of the game is to have fun moving. Just basic run and jump. Nothing fancy. You don't have weird gimmicks, nothing. So the main moral of the story in SMB1 to learn is that the base movement through your level needs to be fun. Because if the base movement of your platformer isn't fun, then why are you playing it? Right? Like seriously, what's the point if a lot of people do all sorts of levels like, oh look, it's cool, and then it's just like flat ground, there's like nothing to fight. It's like, why are we doing this? Right? Here you have this staircase. What's the point of the staircase? The staircase forces Mario to jump in order to ascend and deal with whatever enemy and time with whatever. Alright? The whole point of the game is just moving. If moving through your level isn't fun, garbage level. Defeats the point of being a traditional platformer. So 1-3 really demonstrates one of the core gaming design philosophies behind SMB3, which is block patterns. Alright, so with the regular Nintendo Entertainment System, you didn't have a whole lot of enemies to work with. Alright, the game will lag if you have more than like 3 or 4 enemies on screen simultaneously. Alright, I'm not sure if you ever noticed that, but it's crazy, alright? So instead, what the game designers went for is focusing on interesting patterns of blocks. You look at this, and when you look at this pattern of blocks, you see, okay, Koopa. Koopa can interact with brick blocks and break them, right? Sliding side to side. Okay, that's something very common. And then the player's drawn to, okay, well, what happens if I throw a Koopa into this mass of brick blocks? What is going to happen? Because I want it to hit the question mark block. While anything can contain like a power-up or something, you usually want to go for the big ticket items. Like the question mark blocks here are the ones that draw major attention. And so this obstacle is kind of like designed in kind of a more stupid-proof way, so no matter which way you go through, it will almost happen automatically, as like a tutorial. This is 1-4 in SMB3. The main thing that I want to focus on is the patterns of blocks. Here the brick blocks are used as different platforms for Mario to work with. Also, that brick block lets me attack this Koopa from below. And even if I were big Mario, because that brick block contains coins, I can hit it repeatedly to attack the Koopa, which is part of why it has coins in it. Then as level progresses, there's several opportunities for Mario to use whatever Koopas he acquires to throw them at walls in order to progress more easily. And that is a common trend in SMB3. This is it. Okay. Alright, so here's the one major thing about SMB3, or Super Mario World level design. Branching paths. So with the Super Nintendo came a lot more processing power. You can render a lot more screen. Like top to bottom, we have a lot more blocks. And with that, it's a lot easier now to make branching paths. Like now, if I'm Small Mario, I can go up, grab that blue block. Here we have a timing challenge with like different routes. Damage boosting versus not. And you see a lot of branching paths in Super Mario World. That is one thing that Super Mario World is known for. And that gives a lot of player choice. So like before I was talking about like routes, right? Or like how many different options are you giving the player, right? One way to give them options is to very literally give them different places they can go. Like you give them a different, like you're in this cave. I now have one route there to a dead end with coins. I can go the top route to get the blue blocks, and go the bottom route which had a Koopa shell already. I can go the middle route, which is a little bit harder to get into, but can have something maybe more interesting, but does branch and come back. Or get a blue block, etc. Like we have a lot of options here now. Right? And that is something that Super Mario World does a lot of. Basically, splitting the path so that then we can have different choices of how we might want to go through the level, and different obstacles in each. That is the main thing. But yeah, this all demonstrates one of the key things about underwater, which is timing challenges. In general, underwater, Mario moves really fast vertically, but not very fast horizontally. So just look at how the level is shaped. How much distance is there between one obstacle and the next? The answer to that, really small. Why? Because Mario goes slowly. Because if Mario's going slowly, then it's going to take a long time to get from one obstacle to the next. Here, I don't have to wait swimming through large swaths of empty screen to get across. Here, this is a great example of an enemy formation. So in Super Mario World, they do this a lot. So here we have 5 cheat sheets at once. Normally, like when people think, "Oh, you're putting 5 enemies on screen at once," that's going to be That's going to be like enemy spam. This is ordered. All right, Super Mario World does this a lot. So even though here we have technically 5 cheat sheets, because they're in one big ordered mass, it's a lot easier for you as the player to kind of register this not as 5 separate cheat sheets that are going to be going around kind of like independently of each other. This is one mass. This is like one school of fish to dodge. And that's a lot more manageable than 5 separate cheat sheets. And what's the value of doing this? Because when you have a formation of enemies, that lets you make interesting patterns, make interesting combinations of enemies that you couldn't do before. Okay, so one thing you immediately see with New Soup is space. We have tons and tons and tons of space. Look at how big the screen is relative to Super Mario World. And part of that is because we're going for multiplayer compatibility. That is one of the main design philosophies going into New Soup. Another thing is developing ideas. Relative to a lot of the levels in SMB3 or Super Mario World, New Soup has like a more clearly defined formula where there's a main course part that kind of is the main star of the show. In this level, it's Lakitu. And we also have some terrain that kind of shows up repeatedly, but these levels are way more themed than in other Mario levels that came before it. Here we have, so far we've seen mostly Koopa, Lakitu, Piranha Plant. In terms of having lots of space, part of it is because the game is designed for multiplayer, and when you have 4 people on screen simultaneously, it can become very complicated. But you'll notice that New Soup's design is way more open than its predecessors, and has a very clear progression of an idea. Let's check 3D World out. So even though it's a 3D Mario game, we can get some general ideas, some general design principles of how this is made to see how traditional levels tick in general. So just like in New Soup, we have one main gameplay idea that's going to follow us through the whole level, in this case, Ant Troopers. And we're introduced to that idea relatively early. I know a lot of level design, like a lot of people in Mario Maker, they like to do things like just start your level off with it being completely impossible for Mario to take damage. All right, here I can take damage. I can walk into these Ant Troopers like immediately, right? that's like traditional Nintendo design. I mean, we're introducing these enemies. They're open. We can see them. The idea is shown. We're not wasting time. And we just start off. Still starting off easy, nothing too hard. And one thing that you'll notice about 3D World's level design is, just like in New Soup, it's extremely open. Again, there's a huge focus in 3D World on compatibility with multiplayer. And as a result, there's a lot of space. So yeah, here we have our one breathing room, or our one platform there is breathing room. Here, again, total safe spot. We can just chill here basically indefinitely until we're ready to go. These piranha plants are hard as shit to fight because they have high ground, very high ground, relative to Mario. Plant spam. It's not even spam. The main thing here, Mop, is that they are placed in really hard positions. Because they are all at like really high spots, because the pipes go very, very high, Mario's always disadvantaged when he's jumping to a high position. Because he has less space to clear the obstacle. In addition, with a very small amount of ground here, there's not a whole lot of room to maneuver around the piranha plants. So you see, this is example of spam. This is literally, we're just like putting a ton of enemies everywhere. They're just bill blasters shooting every which way. Good fucking luck getting to this question mark block. See, getting in, hitting it, getting what's inside, and getting the fuck out without taking damage. You see that? We now have 5 enemies to deal with. We have 2 bill blasters, 1 Koopa, 1 Boo, and 1 fire piranha plant. And they're in no sort of formation, which makes all of this hard. And feel spammy. These enemies are, one thing they do well is zone. Like, even though there's a lot of shit going on screen right now, what I want you to appreciate is that they are effectively zoning. These enemies are not randomly placed like little Timmy putting random shit on the screen, alright? These enemies are placed very carefully, alright? This bullet bill shoots on the line that you would be on if you're stomping on this Koopa. This height is precisely made to catch Mario while he's stomping on this Koopa, to protect the Koopa. These two zone Mario as he's trying to land on this Koopa to jump this gap. And this Koopa zones for these bullet bills so that Mario has a tough time jumping from over here onto the bullet bill to cross the gap. And this upper bill blaster, this bullet, zones for the bottom bullet to also stop Mario from jumping onto the low bullet and jumping over, because then the top bullet can smash into him. Yes, Mops, it is placed very carefully to hurt. I'll close up by showing you one of my traditional style levels and how it demonstrates some of these core design principles. The philosophy behind this level is almost entirely lifted from SMB3. So I designed this to be very much like mostly SMB3 with a touch of Super Mario World. And you see the Super Mario World influence in terms of having many like branching paths. So here, in terms of SMB3 style, there's a big focus in this level on block patterns. So here we just have an interesting setup of brick blocks and Koopas. Koopas are super common in SMB3 because they can break brick blocks, you can use them to attack enemies, etc. Like, you have a lot of options when you have Koopas. So here we have this brick block, which inverts high ground advantage for the Koopa so that Mario can easily go get it. Alternatively, Mario could just like time his jump when the Koopa's patrolling the opposite side, and then jump onto it in the low ceiling. But we have options, basically, if you want to go fast. Here, when you throw the Koopa shell, you can hit sideways blocks with power-ups. That's actually also very, very common in SMB3. So, again, when we're talking about power-ups, don't give power-ups away for free. That's usually like not very interesting level design. If you're going to give me a power-up for free, just fucking like automatically give it to me at the start of the level and don't waste time. Alright? Power-ups are like a very powerful baiting tool to get Mario to do things, alright? Having these question mark blocks baits Mario to throw the Koopa shell in a certain way that kills several Goombas, which are also in a formation, that kills the Goombas, activates the blocks, gets you the goods, alright? And you can do this a different way with this Koopa shell, or go back, etc., baiting them to do the thing which is more interesting with the power-up. The more interesting setup here is to kill the triple Goombas with one shell throw, while also breaking whatever blocks. Another thing here is that this power-up is not completely free when you do this. Now the Goombas are dead. However, you see that Koopa shell is about to hit the brick block that would be otherwise holding in the power-up. Meaning that as the power-up comes out and Mario sees there's the power-up, now we're standing here, that Koopa shell is going to be making a return trip. And so Mario has to dodge that Koopa shell and deal with the Koopa shell as the power-up is kind of like on a timer before the power-up falls into a pit. Which is a more interesting risk-reward relationship than just, oh, here's the power-up, you did the thing. We could also have thrown the Koopa shell from down here, which would be in theory the safest way to do it. And just, point being here is to give Mario lots of options, and lots of good options, and reasons to do the options which are interesting or fun to play with, alright? Generally speaking, you want the options that are kind of like the more of the cheese route, the short circuit, the way to like kind of just blow through the level. Those should be the worst routes. Those should be the ones that don't give you good stuff, that don't give you good loot, or give you some greater difficulty or greater challenges. This is the next area. Again, triple Goombas. We can either stomp on them one at a time, or throw a shell at them, or slide down. Again, options. A lot of people, what they do is, I see this all the time in traditional levels, where people will have like several Goombas or whatever on like a slide, and the intention is to slide, but then they put like two slopes right on top of each other, so you can't jump over the Goombas. That is bad design, because that means you're actually restricting the options, because you're making sure that the player only does the one route. The only route that they're allowed to take is the one where they slide down the slope, which is not good. Here we have branching paths. We can go either the low route, hit the big Koopa, which breaks the shell, kind of like goes automatically in the most kind of obvious way to break a path up and through here. Alternatively, we can take the Koopa shell that we got over here to break this block and then proceed through the middle path, or we can platform up to go the top route. Again, we have the option to slide into that piranha plant, go the top route, and there was a Koopa patrolling over here with these brick blocks. You have to throw a Koopa shell. You cannot progress through this level without using a Koopa shell. I hope this guide helped you understand traditional style levels a little bit better through some practical examples of how these principles are applied in real levels. That's all I have for you today, and if you're interested in this kind of content, feel free to subscribe, and either way, I'll see you around, guys. Later!